So I think the 16 Days of Activism is really important because it highlights this issue of violence against women and children, and this is something that's really important for the peace goal, because although South Africa is not a country at war or in like an official state of conflict, we do have these really high levels of violence, and the one place where we regularly see that is in violence directed towards women and children. So in that way, we think that South Africa is a really good example of how a goal on peace and security is relevant for all countries and not just a specific set of countries that are in conflict, but it shows how wherever you are in the world there are going to be issues with conflict and issues with violence, and that takes different forms across different countries, but it's still a universal problem that needs to be addressed in an international forum like the UN or like in the Sustainable Development Goals. I think when it comes to violence against women in South Africa, it's difficult to talk about violence against women without talking about that within the context of like the greater culture of violence that exists in the country. So much as violence against women can be addressed by having goals on gender empowerment and also specific targets on violence against women, and that should be the case, it's also important to look at the broader context of violence that exists in South Africa and understand that rape and domestic abuse and other forms of violence against women are happening within that context. So if the Sustainable Development Goals are going to adequately address this problem, they also need to look at creating a peaceful environment with an accountable governance system, so that the gender goals can also be addressed within this context. So that's why I think it's important for there to be a goal on gender empowerment as well as a goal on peace and security, to make sure that there's a holistic approach to addressing the problem. UNASA, along with Wafuna and the other UNAs that are part of the Freedom for Violence project, we are all pushing for indicators that focus on the concept of positive peace. So it's not only about reducing instances of violence, but also about encouraging a culture of peace and people feeling that they have a means of expressing themselves or dissatisfaction without having to resort to violence. So that involves indicators like peace education, which is really important, in which a lot of our partner organizations are already doing in Cape Town and in South Africa, and supporting that there are conflict resolution mechanisms that people can go to with grievances to have disputes and conflicts resolved in a way that doesn't resort to violence. It's also really important that we look at measuring people's perceptions, because we can talk about having a drop in like X number of violent deaths in the country, but if people are still feeling unsafe in their homes, or women are still feeling like it's not safe for them to use the toilet at night or to walk to the shop, then we can't say that we've achieved peace in a country or that we're progressing towards peace, even if we have reduced like the level of violent deaths. So we want to see the success of this goal measured in terms of how do people feel. Do they feel safe? Do they feel that they can trust the police or the security forces or the judicial system to defend them against violence? And we think that's a really good way of grounding the goal so that it actually reflects the grassroots understanding of what's happening and where we stand in terms of peace in South Africa.